Today we're going to look at how this picture spins out into different stories depending on where you're standing. But first, we'll look at the top 5 stories on Today Unpacked's This Week Unpacked by Unpacked. My apologies in advance. Format and graphics are going to be a little janky today because I'm on my own.
Like a divine jankiness, right?
But let's go. Number 5, yikes.
Yikes.
Photos of Palestinian men in Gaza were spread across the internet, raising questions and challenges. More on that later. Number 4, UN says what?
What?
The UN General Assembly voted in favor of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. And while the UN resolution doesn't mean much, it is representative of the overall international effort to stop the fighting in Gaza.
International political pressure on Israel mounts.
Number 3, Samantha Woll. A suspect was charged in the murder of Samantha Woll, a Detroit synagogue leader murdered outside her home on October 21st. While the murder sparked fear of further anti-Semitic attacks in the U.S. in the wake of the war in Gaza, authorities are saying right now that antisemitism is not suspected to be a motive in the attack. Number 2, Back to the Future. Israel and the U.S. continue to disagree about a vision for the future of Gaza. They both agree that Hamas must be eradicated, but Israel does not see the Palestinian Authority in its current form as a legitimate government that can take over in Gaza, while the U.S. is pushing for the PA to be a part of the future of the Gaza government. And all of this is complicated by, number 1, thumbs up for Hamas. A recent poll among Palestinians shows support for Hamas going up and support for the Palestinian Authority going down, which doesn't make anyone's job easier when they're trying to plan the future of Gaza. Chapter 2, Antiviral. Taylor Swift attended a fundraiser for Gaza, and while raising money to rebuild Gaza is a noble cause, her silence and lack of support for Israel drew attention on Twitter. And SNL's Cold Open mocked the session in Congress covering anti-Semitism on college campuses, but the sketch drew criticism for mocking the politicians at the hearing, but seemingly giving the college presidents a pass. Chapter 3, Beyond the Echo Chamber. Leaked videos and photos spun out into different narratives around the world. We'll take a look at a few different news sources and how they told the story of these images. In Israel, the photos were portrayed as Hamas fighters surrendering en masse, presented as proof that Israel was succeeding in its war aims. Al Jazeera argued that discrepancies in the images proved that the entire thing was a fake. Their narrative was that these were simply innocent men rounded up and humiliated for the sake of Israeli propaganda. The BBC took a middle path, explaining that the images were separate parts of one long take. In a rare moment of triage, Israeli officials condemned the leak of the photos, explaining that the Palestinian men had surrendered inside an active combat zone, were stripped to check for suicide bombs, and the innocent released to safe zones. Indeed, those released went on to tell Arabic media sources about mistreatment at the hands of Israeli soldiers. And Israel responded saying that soldiers caught mistreating Palestinian prisoners would be punished. And as of Thursday, continued to share images of Hamas gunmen surrendering. Chapter 4, Zooming Out. Once again, I spoke with Yirmiyahu Danzig to get a bigger picture of what's going on.
As far as the IDF and Israeli society is concerned, this is still a war between the IDF or Israel and Hamas, not a war between Israel and the Palestinians. Whereas the people that are supporting Hamas or taking an exclusively Gazan perspective on the events want to push the narrative that this is a war between Israel and Palestinians, whether the Israelis like it or not. And so if we focus on the humiliating aspect of men being stripped naked and arrested by IDF soldiers, it plays into this theme that the IDF isn't in this to destroy Hamas, but rather to humiliate and defeat Palestinians.
Chapter 5, Ask a Bubbe. This week, once again, I spoke with Sharon Katz to get a few pearls of wisdom.
Never go back, always go forward. I met this 104-year-old lady and she said, how much do you walk? And I said, I used to walk 6 kilometers a day, but now I hurt my knee, so I could only walk 4. So she said, don't say what you were. You are what you are today. You walk 4 kilometers a day today. Great. You can work towards something else. Don't think I could have been this. I was once this. I wish I was that. I wish I could go back. You can't go back. Don't ever go back. Only go forward.
Chapter 6, Looking Ahead. Keep your eyes out next week for how the story of Hamas men surrendering continues to unfold, and whether or not Arabic media starts to tell a narrative of Hamas's collapse. And that's it for Today Unpacked's This Week Unpacked by Unpacked.